Hi everyone, I'm Aline from the Script Runner team, and we are very happy that you tuned in today. We want to talk about how to simplify your Azure administration in 5 easy steps with PowerShell. If you have any questions during the session, we invite you to use the GoToWebinar feature in the panel on the right. At the end of the session, we will have a small Q&A round. And if we don't answer your question in this round, we will contact you personally by email afterwards. We will ask questions as well during the webinar, and that's why I will start with the first question right now. And you should be seeing our first question, and it is, where do you prefer to get PowerShell information from? For SysOps, PowerShell.org, PowerShellMagazine.com, Planet PowerShell, or others. And if you know any other platforms or blogs, just feel free to drop them into the chat, and we would love to check them out. Okay, great. Thanks for your participation. And we are looking at the results. And we can see that for SysOps is the most popular, followed by PowerShell.org and Planet PowerShell. So thanks for answering the first question. And we will go back to the slide. And I want to introduce you today to today's speaker. Heiko Brenn is Head of International Business here at ScriptRunner, and he will talk a bit about Azure Administration today. Hi.
Hi, Aline. Hello, everybody.
Great. So more questions will follow. And if you have any questions, again, just use the panel on the right, and we hope you're going to learn something today. Thank you.
All right, great. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining. And so today we're talking Azure and PowerShell. Before we dive into the subject, some more additional information about the logistics of the webinar. So it's going to be 45 minutes, and you will receive the presentation slides and a link to the webinar recording afterwards if you have double opt-in to us. And so that brings me to the agenda. So what we are going to cover today is, what can you use for managing and automating Azure, and how PowerShell helps with that, and then also how ScriptRunner in this context is helping you. So if you look at the possibilities to manage and to automate Azure, there are a lot of functionalities and products out there. And so if you looking for the right solution, it typically starts with the first step to really to find what tools are out there. And if you follow what Microsoft is already doing, there are a lot of things in Azure already for managing and automating Azure, and so we will cover a few of them afterwards. And I think, Aline, you have already a question regarding these tools.
Yes, absolutely. We are starting with a more general question, and we are asking, what do you even use Azure for? So the options are VM management, SQL databases, web apps, machine learning, and others. So there are a lot of opportunities, and we just wanted to know how you use Azure in your infrastructure. Great, thanks for answering. And again, we'll just check out the results. And we can see, of course, Azure is the most popular platform for VM management, but all other options are popular as well. Thank you. And we will just go right into the next question. And this is all about automation. And we wanted to know what kind of automation you already use for Azure. So the opportunities I counted here are the ARM templates, Azure Automation, Azure CLI, of course, PowerShell, and again, others. It would be great if you could just take a second to answer the questions, and we will check out the results again. There we go. So again, we can see the majority is into PowerShell, which is of course no surprise. We are all PowerShell fans, and Azure Automation is already used as well. Thank you. And back to you, Heiko.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, as mentioned, there are a lot of different opportunities, and they're coming almost every 2 weeks. There are new functionalities, for example, like Azure Blueprints now is in preview to kind of getting another possibility to work with profiles and automations and functions and stuff like that. And so for today, we are focusing on two aspects. One is Azure Cloud Shell, and the other one is the PowerShell modules. So as I said, the first thing is really to find out what's out there. And when it comes to Azure, it's worth checking it continuously because new things are coming out. And then, of course, the next step is, okay, what tools are actually making sense for me? And to answer this question, first, you are going to start and test this functionality there. And so we are going to look into two different aspects. And one is, as I mentioned, the Azure Cloud Shell, which is a functionality. It's around for quite a while, and it's also getting updated continuously. And it's something where you can get access to your Azure resources with every browser. So you just, for example, go to shell.azure.com and you're right into your Azure subscription, and it doesn't require any installation. And what's happening when you're starting that shell is there is a Linux VM being spinned up temporarily, and then you can start with get AZVM and start managing resources in Azure. There, of course, there are some aspects to know, that there is a fixed 20-minute timeout. So, and this is not customizable. So it's really for doing things on the fly. If you're somewhere and you want to check the consumption, or you want to start or stop a VM or things like that, or maybe even create one. So that's something that you can do with Azure Cloud Shell. So for me, it's like a companion to the real PowerShell module. If you want to do something and you're not in front of your laptop or your PC, it supports Bash and PowerShell Core. It's also integrated into docs.microsoft.com. So if you go there to check it out, and you can immediately click on test, and they're starting this console for you. And it's really a good way to have tasks where you can just use command-led or a one-liner to do things there. There is also an editor, and we will take a look at this, but this is kind of limited. And what you also have to remember, of course, there is also the possibility to store scripts and files, and of course that's then where the cost aspects comes into the picture, because these scripts that you want to store and use with the Cloud Shell is stored in the Azure file share. So then, of course, it's about having these resources, and you're about to having to pay for that. But when it comes to a handful of scripts, that's of course not a big deal. And then we have the real PowerShell experience, the complete PowerShell experience when it comes to Azure AC. That is running on your local machine. You have the full PowerShell experience. You can not just work with the Azure modules, but of course you can combine it with all other available PowerShell modules. So that gives you, of course, much more possibilities. So these are the two modules that our functionality that we are going to look into, because after we know what we have here, we are going to test that, and we're going to do that by simply open up the browser and start looking at the Azure Cloud Shell. And so here we are in my Azure subscription, and one way to start Azure Cloud Shell is you have this icon here in the upper menu bar, and you can click on Cloud Shell, and then it opens up the Cloud Shell in my case, for PowerShell, because I made this the default. You could also go to shell.azure.com/PowerShell, for example, or we could even say I want to open up a Bash session, and then when you're logged in, you're just going to having this bash experience. So there are just two functionalities. So one is PowerShell, the other one is bash. And now, of course, for today, we are going to stick for PowerShell, and I can also switch here. You can also open up additional windows. So if you're starting one command or one script in one Cloud Shell instance, you can just open up another one. And so once you're here, you can just say, okay, I want to look at my the status of my Azure VMs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to look at the status here. And what's also interesting is that you can actually walk through your Azure resources, because if you look at the directory here, you can just jump right into your subscription, and you can check out all the different resources here, and you can jump to your virtual machines, for example. So that's really makes it very easy, and it's very handy to just go into the resources and look at it. And of course, it's kind of limited when it comes to the modules, because if you look at the installed modules, this is the AC module, but what you can also do is you can start to connect to your Exchange Online infrastructure by just connecting, and so you can open up that. And what happens here is the commandlets are being integrated into your session. Once the session is closed, then of course this is not available if you start it again. So you would have to use connect this connect command again. But now if you look at the module, we have another one, which is this the one for Exchange, where you could start to look at your mailboxes and maybe configure and change settings on the mailboxes and stuff like that. So it's pretty handy if it comes to like common tasks in Azure, looking at your resources, changing that, starting a VM, for example. So if we go back here, and by the way, you can also start the transcript, so you can do this as well. So that's also going to be stored in this Azure file share, and it's available then afterwards. So that's kind of an experience that you have also when you do that stuff locally. And and for example, if we go back to my VMs, and we see, okay, all of them are, there's one is running, and maybe I want to start another one, then of course I can do that here, and we go for test one in the resource group, this one, and then it's going to start. So this takes a while. So, and that's when it comes in handy to say, okay, I just want to open up another shell. You can do that. And you can also work with, as I mentioned, kind of an editor where you can jump through your files and the directories that you have created, and so that gives you a possibility also to do some editing stuff. But of course, it's not a real complete environment to really do extensive scripting, but it's a good way to just work with that and do something on the fly. And this is also available on your mobile device. So here I have a small video that shows the Azure app on an Android device, and you see here in the upper right, lower right corner, you have this Cloud Shell icon here, and if you click on that, it opens up a Cloud Shell just as in the browser. Of course, you have a smaller window, so it's kind of limited, but to do things on the fly, again, it's also the same functionality as if you would be in the browser. And so it's really a good companion app when it comes to managing Azure resources, on the fly, as I mentioned. So this is something that's really, I think, is quite handy. And then of course, the second one that we're going to look at is let's say, the real PowerShell experience, which comes in my case with the ISE. So what you see here is I have my ISE. I have already installed my AC module. So what I could do here, I could do my get AC VM also, but of course I have to connect. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to connect to my Azure account. So I've been asked in this case, because I'm doing it manually, I'm being asked for my credentials. And so then afterwards I have kind of, yeah, the same functionality, so to speak, when it comes to the default commandlets, but of course I can do much more because I can combine that with all other modules. And I could, for example, now I could say, okay, I want to get my Azure consumption information, so I know what do I have to expect when it comes to the payment of the resources, and I can use that consumption usage details. Of course, that will bring up a big list, so that might not be really that helpful. That's why in the second step we will kind of go for the top 10 resources and kind of getting just the information that's really interesting for us, which is the cost itself and the resource, the name of the resource and stuff like that. So that's, of course, the things that you can do with the full PowerShell. You can do all the scripting there, and of course, and we saw that in the poll. The major topic right now is VM management, but of course, you could do all kind of spinning up SQL databases, looking into machine learning aspects, web apps, and stuff like that. So, of course, it's a really powerful tool. And for you as the administrator, that's really where you want to be. So you get an easy access to all your Azure resources. You can manage, as I mentioned, all the resources, VMs, consumption, resource groups, network security groups, and stuff like that. The interesting question then comes up. Okay, now you have an environment where you can work with this Azure resources, and you can spin up VMs, you can stop them, you can do whatever. But wouldn't it be great if you could take particular tasks when it comes to this Azure management and maybe to automate and to delegate that maybe to people who are not really into PowerShell, who maybe have never seen a PowerShell prompt or an ISE or Visual Studio Code, but they should be able to maybe to create a new VM in Azure, and a VM that really is not the 32 processor machine, but maybe they are limited to, okay, you can create one with one processor or maybe 4 processors and 8 GB RAM, and that's it. And so this is where the simplification of these Azure management comes into the picture, and that's where we are going to switch back to my VM, because of course now after we have checked out in our case 2 of the possible options, it's about thinking about, okay, what do you want to actually use? So okay, you have checked out what's out there, you have tested a few of them, and now it's about, okay, what are the right tools? And that of course depends on what your goals are, what your company strategy are. Are you Windows shop only, or are you using Windows and Linux? And maybe Azure CLI might be an option. And it's also about, of course, the skill set. So the skill set of yourself and also in the team. I guess in today in the audience we have people all into PowerShell, so that's why PowerShell, of course, would be one of course the right tools, and combining that with the Azure Cloud Shell is really a very good way to start and to use that, as I mentioned, also on the fly. So, but again, it really depends on where you're heading to and what kind of skill sets you already have in your organization. And when it comes to then start using the right tools, of course, we already saw the PowerShell AC module, which we have installed. And of course, to do that, you have to install it on your machine, and you connect to your Azure subscription, or maybe you have multiple Azure subscriptions, and then you start using the AC module to whatever you want to manage with your or inside your Azure subscription. And then you have for yourself, you have a good environment to start the scripts to manage Azure. And so the question that comes up is, okay, and how could you start simplifying that? And also in the sense of how could you involve other people in managing Azure resources without worrying about permissions, credentials, and stuff like that. And this is where the simplification comes into the picture, which is also a 5-step approach. Because what we say, what is the starting point to simplify working with PowerShell, especially when it comes to Azure, is really taking all the scripts, everything that you want to use to manage Azure, to put that into one place. So instead of having multiple versions somewhere and you sending the scripts around via email, centralize all of them, which is also then the starting point to start to develop these scripts and to maintain them in a team, because you have them in a centralized repository. And it's also true for the modules. So as I mentioned, of course, you need to have this AC module installed. Once you centralize that, you only have to do that in the central place, and you can make it available to many different users, independent of what they have locally on their machine. The second step is then, of course, we talk about the credentials. So what do you need in order to spin up a VM in Azure or to create a new SQL database in Azure? Of course, you need to have user password, and this user needs to have the right permissions to do that. And this is another aspect of centralization, to say, okay, we want to make that management easier. And so we also take the credentials and the permissions and we store them in a central place. And so we have the scripts centrally, we have the credentials and the permissions managed centrally. And now we can start asking the question about, okay, what are the use cases for Azure administration that we want to simplify first? And typically, these are the ones where, well, maybe they are the most annoying ones because you have to do that 20 times a day, or it's things that really is something that where you think that could be something that would be also a task for the help desk people, or maybe even for people in the line of business. So it's really about identifying the right use cases. And in the next step, then, okay, if you know, okay, we are going to start with, for example, the management and creating of Azure VMs, then it's about running that scripts, of course, also in a central place, and to make it in a way that you can monitor it, that you have a dashboard where you see, okay, who has actually created a new VM with this 8 processor, and so you know what kind of consumption you might run into by the end of the month and things like that. So, and running scripts also means that, of course, that could happen in different ways. So one could be, it's a manual approach. Somebody is starting to execute a script manually. The second one would be a scheduled process where you say, okay, I want to have this consumption information every day and send the latest status to my IT manager, for example. And the third one could be the fully automated one, where triggered by a monitoring system, some PowerShell scripts should be fired up. And so that's the different functionality that you see here. And then as a fifth step is really to start delegating tasks to help desk users, to developers, so they can create their own resource group with their VMs, of course, combined with the limitations that you want to see there, so that so that the developer or somebody is not able to create the biggest Azure VM that might cost, I don't know, maybe $800 in a month. So of course, that's something that really also plays into into the security area. So I would like to show you how how that actually works. And so we are going to switch to my VM, and we take a look at first at the centralization piece of what I mentioned before. So here we are on a Windows 10 machine, where what we see here first is there is a plugin, a script runner plugin, that shows me all the available centralized scripts. And if I want to see all the ones that are related to Azure, I can do that. If I want to see all of them, not only the ones that I can edit, I can see that list, and I can check out scripts. So this is where you start really developing scripts in a team. And all these scripts are stored in a central place. You see here there's a folder structure, and for today's webinar, we are of course going into all the stuff around Azure. And the good news here is that all the scripts that are available here, you can use as well, because they are available on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub/scriptrunner, there is what we call action packs. And here you see different action packs for not only for Azure, but also for Exchange, for Active Directory, for Office 365. And so you can just use them and store them locally, and you can start working with them, maybe customizing to your needs and stuff like that. So that's freely available on GitHub. So I can really recommend to go there and to take a look at the different scripts. And what I have here is really just a synchronized copy of all that scripts. And it's not just about Azure, it's about all the other different platforms where you can use PowerShell to manage it. And so talking about the scripts, we have scripts here that really follow the best practice approach from Microsoft. So we have the synopsis, we have the parent block, and then the commands themselves. And what's interesting and what you will see later on is that by using that synopsis information, we dynamically creating a web user interface with all the information and the description that you see here. And that means that there is no more UI coding necessary to make something available for people that, as I mentioned before, that are not really into PowerShell. But they should be able to do and to fulfill tasks based on PowerShell. And to show you that, I'm going to switch to my server machine, because that's where ScriptRunner is actually working. And what you see here is what we call the delegate app. And with this delegate app, you could, for example, say, okay, there is a user in help desk, or maybe it's even somebody in a line of business, and you want them to be able to get an information about all the Azure VMs that are configured in a particular subscription, for example. And so you could just say, okay, click on the tile, and you see the information about all the Azure VMs as if you would sit in front of the PowerShell console. But in this case, you can really do that just in the browser, and you see the information that is necessary here. And you can even say, okay, maybe you want to be able to, or someone should be able to create a new VM. And so what you see here again, what you see here is dynamically created based on the PowerShell scripts. So we are taking the information from the synopsis, which is the description of the fields. Also, the information that you see here, for example, there is a drop-down menu where say, okay, what kind of images can you use to create a new VM? Is it Windows only, or should it also be Linux, for example? And of course, if you use it PowerShell AC natively, you could kind of do everything you want, right? You could go into a different region, or maybe you could check out a VM that's really expensive. And now in our case, you could just say, no, we have just 2 regions that you can use to create a VM. And you can also say, okay, and you only have the choice of between 2 different sizes of the VMs. And so you see here, okay, and it even says, okay, the first one would kind of be $100 per month, approximately. And then you could start creating a new VM. The person who's actually doing that is just normal domain user and has no clue about PowerShell, but you have delegated this particular task to a person in help desk, for example. So you don't have to be the ones to do that, so you can delegate that. And that's possible because we are, as I mentioned, centralizing not only the scripts but also the credentials that you need to log into Azure. But of course, we're talking about all other systems as well, on-premise, hybrid, or in the cloud, AWS, Exchange, you name it. We have all the scripts here where you can say, okay, this script should be also available in our plugin to check out and check in scripts. And here you have the targets, and the target means, okay, this could be an Azure subscription, it could be an Office 365 tenant or local exchange, so you can, or Hyper-V, so you can combine all the different systems and to manage them from a central place. And all that comes together in what we call actions, and this create VMs, but that, as an example that we just looked into, consists of different components. So we are going to we are talking to Azure. We're using a particular PowerShell script. In our case, we also combine that with 2 queries because I had to choose, or was able to choose, the Azure location and the VM sizes. And this information comes from queries where you can very easily say, okay, maybe like in this case, it's just a simple list that says, okay, these are the 3 locations that are available, and the parameters on the right side, this is the information that actually goes into the PowerShell script later on to actually start the script and to process the script. This also could be, of course, query scripts and dynamic scripts, and all that together comes to this Azure, to these actions here. And if you want to delegate, for example, somebody should be able also to remove VMs. You could just say, okay, I want to delegate that to a specific user group, for example, and so it becomes available here on the tiles here. And the tiles are actually also divided into the different aspects. Like here we have the ones for Azure, there could be ones for Exchange or Exchange Online and stuff like that. And if you have other tasks like, okay, I want to see the Azure consumption, that might be something that you want to schedule and send an email to your IT management. So you could do this here as well. So this would then run, of course, automatically in the background. And so you can combine all the different use cases, starting from somebody is clicking on a child to do something, scheduling it, or down to really automating stuff by having, for example, a monitoring system that detects an issue and tells the script runner to, okay, start this script because we want to maybe restart a service, or we have to enhance the number of CPUs in the VM because the threshold is reached, and things like that. And all of that activities are then coming together in that dashboard. And in this dashboard, you can see actually what happened. And so there might be cases with no errors like this one. This is where we looked into the status of VMs. There might be things that maybe go wrong. We have the red column here, and you can see, okay, there was some issue with the authentication, and you get a detailed report about that. That's actually representing what you would also see if you run the PowerShell script in the native PowerShell console. So you have the full control about everything that goes on, no matter if it's a script that has been triggered automatically or scheduled or in an automatic way. And so that makes it very easy to manage, in our case now, the Azure resources. It's easy and secure to delegate and automate stuff based on PowerShell, and giving this task again to people who maybe don't even know that PowerShell exists, and they don't even have the permissions on Exchange. But because Script Runner is acting as an execution proxy, they can still trigger that action, and they can select whatever is necessary to, like what we just saw, the VM name and the VM size. And maybe if there are additional things that you want them to be able to select, then you can just add that. And again, that will be then just be another way to dynamically create or refresh the input form, and it will be available immediately in the browser app. And so that's the reason why the delegation of that task becomes that easy. And by taking all that 5 steps, centralizing the scripts and the modules, starting developing scripts together, having all the credentials, permissions centrally to run the scripts, identifying the right use cases, running the scripts and monitoring them centrally, and then that gives you the possibility then to really start delegating tasks to, again, help desk users, developers, end users, self-service functionality, and so on. And that's all possible because at the heart of what's happening here, we still have all the PowerShell greatness with all the different modules from whatever platform, and on top of that, we take care of all of the things that we just looked into, and so that again makes PowerShell a real solution. All right, so that would be it from my side. Aline, do we have questions?
We don't actually have questions yet. So if you have any, just feel free to use the panel option on the right and contact us. And if you have questions later on, just feel free to contact us later via email or our website, and we are happy to get any messages from you.
So okay, so then we can talk about our next webinar maybe. So if you want to know more about this first step, this first column that I mentioned about centralizing scripts and developing that script in a team, there will be a webinar in June that's concentrating on that. And then of course you also might want to meet us in person, so to speak. And so we are going to be at the Experts Live Europe in November. So you might thinking about going there. And we're also going to be at the PowerShell conference in Hanover. And I think, Aline, you have a question regarding this, right?
Yes, we want to find out if we can meet any one of you at the PowerShell conference in Hanover. And so it would be cool if you're answering this last question for us, and maybe we can see you there. Okay, great. Thanks for answering. So that's the last question for this webinar today.
Okay, so if you like that, what you saw, and you're interested to do more, we can do all kinds of activities afterwards. Get some demo. You can try it yourself in your infrastructure, and so on. And as mentioned, you will receive the presentation and the link to the webinar afterwards, so you can look that stuff up again and maybe give it to your colleagues as well. All right, so I think then if there are no questions coming in.
No, not yet. But
okay.
Thanks for the insights into the Azure administration, and we hope it helped you today to listen to our webinar. And we would be looking forward if you join us for the next webinar. And if you have any questions or an idea for a special topic you want to hear more about, feel free to contact us with our website, our social media, or via email. And we do have one little survey left, which will start right after the webinar, and it would be amazing if you could give us your feedback to today's session.
All right, great. Then thanks for everybody for joining in, and maybe see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.